we better look at that plot of the reflectance versus incident angle again that we were just looking at. Here you get 4% reflection at normal incidence and large reflection at grazing incidence. But look here, notice Tm actually goes to 0, which actually makes sense. If you think back to little RTM, it was the one that minus 0.2 that went up to 1. So the little RTM must have crossed 0. Little RTE never did. It went from minus 2.2 to minus 1. So because little RTM goes through 0, when you square it, big RTM also goes through 0. So what that means is there's one special angle where only TE is reflected. So what that can do is give you polarized light by reflection. So let's look at polarized reflections. If we have unpolarized light, but a mixture of TE and TM coming in, at this special condition, only TE would come out. So that would be a pretty easy way to make polarized light. So let's see if we can figure out the angle and what's going on. It seems like all you got to do is calculate where does RTM equal 0. That's simple enough. So it seems like then you would just solve for the incident angle with your expression for big RTM. This actually is not really how you want to do it. So that leads to kind of a big trigonometric nightmare. Let's try so let's not do that. Let's do a microscopic picture. And that doesn't mean I'm going to write it really small. That means we're going to think back to light interacting with electrons and things in the material, like we've been doing. So let's just think of our general case interface here, index N, and we have Ki incident coming in, we have K reflected and K transmitted, and it falls to the normal. And let's see, so this is KT. There we go. All right, so what we want to do now is zoom in really tight here. Let's get rid of that. So when we zoom in really small right here to the microscopic scale, we recall that these are really atoms. We have a row of atoms here experiencing the electromagnetic field. And then below that is another row of atoms. And I'm just kind of drawing the outer electron cloud here, you can imagine. All right? So now let me draw this again, where beam is going to come in and it's going to go down like that. There's your transmitted direction, and the normal conveniently is almost along a row of atoms. There we go. The normal is along that row. So there's theta t right there, that angle that we've seen many times. And the light coming in will assume came in at about that angle, K incident. And then let's think physically, before we think about the reflected ray, let's think about what's really happening to the electrons in these atoms. The electromagnetic field is shaking them. Okay, they are oscillating. This is how we described the action of the electromagnetic field inside a dielectric. But you could ask, which one is it? Is the internal field shaking them or the external field shaking them? Is it the transmitted plane wave or the incident plane wave? The answer is it's a transmitted plane wave, because really the interface, you could imagine, is up here. The interface is above the atoms. Once you've made it to the atoms, you're inside the material, because an interface is infinitely thin even at the atomic scale. So we need to kind of move this over a little bit and say that's really the interface. Okay, so the little electrons are going to oscillate, and I'll show that with the little vibrating marks, and it's going to be perpendicular to this KT, because the E field is going to be this way for RTM. Right? We're talking about RTM, so the E field is like this, and it's like that. So they're going to oscillate normal to this vector, like that, and like that. So that's how they're shaking, okay? Not perpendicular to the incident, but perpendicular to the transmitted. Now, one thing you need to know about oscillating electrons is this is basically a little oscillating dipole moment. So oscillating dipole moments do not radiate along the direction of vibration. So we can think in terms of a continuum where the light just comes in, we solve Maxwell's equations, and we just get the results R, big R and little r. But if we think microscopic, what's really happening is it's all really scattering. So this light shakes the electrons and they radiate, and that light shakes those electrons and they radiate, and it shakes those electrons and they radiate. That's really what's happening. So microscopically, we can say to ourselves, well, what would happen if the reflection were right along the direction of the vibration? Okay. That doesn't have to happen. I've just drawn it in a way to make that happen. Right? I drew Kr and Ki purposefully to where Kr is right along the direction of the oscillations. So all of these angles are normal. This is theta I. This is theta r. They're equal. This is theta t. But I did this case where it just so happens that the reflected k vector is at 90 degrees to the transmitted k vector. I did my best to get them at 90 degrees. If that happens, then the k vector is along the oscillation direction of this dipole, and nothing comes out, because those little oscillating electrons can't send any light that way. And that's really where all the light comes from. Okay? So let's say, if theta I plus theta transmitted equals 90 degrees, then you get no reflection. And we're talking about RTM here. Notice that for RTE, they oscillate this way. This thing can't happen in RTE. Everything's oscillating like this, and any angle you go on the reflected ray, oscillations like this are happy to send light. So that's the other reason this only happens to RTM, is it's the one that oscillates in the right way. Okay, so this is then the special condition. So we could have done hours of trig and never gotten there trying to do this. This is really all it is that theta I plus theta t has to be 90 degrees. So then to get a nice expression for it, you just apply Snell's law. Snellius, I believe is his actual name. And you get that sine theta I. So Snell's law for just air glass was that sine of theta incident, because n equals 1 on this side, equals n times the sine of theta transmitted, but theta transmitted is 90 minus theta incident in this special case. Well, of course, that means that sine theta I equals n times cosine theta I. Not always true, but this is the special case. And what that means is that this theta I we actually call theta b, and you can see n is sine theta I over cosine theta I. So that's tangent of theta I, right? So tangent of the incident angle that makes this happen is equal to n. So the angle that makes this happen is called Brewster's angle, and it's the inverse tangent of the index of refraction. That's all it is. Okay. This is called Brewster's angle, or the polarization angle. You might see it called theta p. But sometimes this is very useful when you want to work with polarized light, is you can make it with just a simple piece of glass. All you need is a flat glass surface. You can take unpolarized light, get it at the right angle, and only reflect one of the two components. It's also useful in your everyday life. So you can use this as a way to get rid of glare. Let's see. So first let's just draw you, and you're going to be right here. This is you, not to scale. And you're just standing around on the earth, and you're looking around, and you see everything. Over here is the sun. Okay? The sun's always happy because it's going to live for 500 billion years or something like that. So it's got nothing to worry about. There's the sun. Everything you see, almost everything you see, is due to light from the sun. right? So the sun sends light everywhere, scatters off all these objects, diffracts around, we'll talk about it later, and it comes into your eye. And that's how you see. That's how we see things. But if there is a patch here of something smooth on the ground in front of you, you can actually get a really strong beam of light from the sun. Because most of what you see in the light from the sun is diffuse. It scatters off things and makes its way to your eye. But if you have essentially a mirror here, like some water or some oil or just a real flat road, then you can get some light that goes directly from the sun to your eye, right? And then you're unhappy. And this is glare. You're essentially looking at the sun. You're seeing its direct reflection in a surface. So that's glare. And you don't want glare, right? So the sun sends us essentially a plane wave that has both polarizations in it. So it has, let's see, this would be TE, and this would be TM. And it actually happens that the glare you get is polarized because the angle works out to be roughly similar to a typical index's Brewster angle. So the glare is actually fairly strongly polarized. It comes in at roughly Brewster's angle, and therefore you lose TM, and you just get TE. So the glare isn't as bad as it could be. It's only half the amount of light. But now, here comes the important thing that we can do, is this is why sunglasses are often polarized, is you can wear sunglasses, and you can get sunglasses that are designed to where they only pass they only pass TM, right? So their polarization axis is like this. They only pass light oscillating this way, not light oscillating that way. That's a polarizer. We'll talk about it later, exactly how it works, but that's the idea. So basically your sunglasses block, so polarized sunglasses block the TE glare. Right? And then you're happy. Because now you don't have to see the glare. And the sun often is always depicted also wearing sunglasses. I'm not sure why, so I don't know. His go both ways because he sees everything, okay? So this is how sunglasses work. I can actually show it to you by putting some big sunglasses on the camera. So this is just a giant piece of what we would call Polaroid. It's a Polaroid film. It really is just a big polarizer, all right? So what I'm going to do is hold this over the camera at a couple of angles, and you'll be able to see glare being reduced. So you should look over there where I get the chalk all the time. And if you look in the table, the bench right in front of me, and you'll see glare there, but when I turn it, the glare might go away. And I forgot which way I'm holding the Polaroid, if this is up or down, right? So glare, no glare. Glare, no glare. So here, you're getting some TE from the surface, and here I'm blocking it. I'm only letting TM pass. So the only light getting to you is diffuse light. So that is how polarized sunglasses work. That's why polarized sunglasses are a little bit more expensive, is because they actually have polarized material in the lenses. Now, here's the deal. I wear cheap sunglasses because my wife won't allow me to have polarized sunglasses. Because if you have polarized sunglasses, what you can do is walk around all day and look for polarized reflections like this. So whenever I wear polarized sunglasses, and these are not, I do that, and I say, oh, there's some polarized sun glare over there, that's interesting, and I think about Brewster's angle. And that would be bad enough, but I also do it while I'm driving. If I drive in polarized sunglasses, suddenly do this, and she gets really mad. So no polarized sunglasses for me, and now maybe you can never wear polarized sunglasses again either, because it'll be a safety hazard.